So the vice president, his name is JD Vance. He's scheduled to speak in Wisconsin. We're going to figure out what's going on off the coast of Cuba. I'm Tony Katz. The show is called Tony Katz Today. I'm glad you're here. Let's begin. JD Vance is a superhero. Okay. He's the vice president who I sometimes disagree with, but he's taking on fraud. As the president said, hey, JD, you're taking on fraud. And JD said, excellent. And now he's scheduled to speak in Wisconsin. We're going to bring that to you. Tony Katz today. Good to be here. Good to be with you. 833-GOT-TONY, 833-468-8669, 833-GOT-TONY to take it to be a part of the show. This is exactly what you would expect to happen after the State of the Union. Now it's okay, let's go and deliver on this message. And it's a message of American uplift, American strength, American possibility, American future, all these things being good things. Let's go to work. Excellent. We're still hearing about the fallout of the State of the Union. This did not go well at all in any way for the Democratic Party. This has been a bad scene because they forgot the basics. Step one, be normal. Just be normal. Couldn't do it. And they failed miserably at their responses. They failed miserably on reaction. And it's not the only thing that they're falling apart on. Maybe you missed this. This is Harry Enton. This is the guy who does the numbers over at CNN. Where is it that the Democrats are on something as simple as a subject they think they're winning, like immigration?
It's so important to note, after all the events in Los Angeles, after all the events in Minneapolis, after all the events of the last year on immigration, can Democrats actually take advantage on this issue? And a look at the polling suggests actually no, they're in a worse position than they were at this point during Donald Trump's first term. Take a look here. Trust which party more on immigration? In 2018, Democrats had an edge of about 6 points. You come over to this side of the screen now, look at that. Republicans are the ones who actually have an edge on immigration. So this whole idea that Democrats are going to be able to take advantage of the immigration group, of the immigration issue, actually doesn't bear itself out in the polling, despite everything that's been going on. In fact, Democrats are in worse position than they were during Donald Trump's first term.
Yeah. Now, it's a little hard to really discuss in detail comparisons to first term as if it matters. But let's take it from as we have it. Republicans up by 5. Can we discuss what this does tell us? I would argue that what this tells us is that anybody who's willing to believe narrative is willing to believe anything. Absolutely anything. The narrative is not the story. You are smarter than the media, which is not saying much at all. I didn't mean to insult you. I apologize. They're telling a story. They're telling a story to move a math, to move a philosophy, to move an agenda, and their story does not comport with reality. It doesn't. And the idea that somehow the country is opposed to ICE and disgusted by immigration's customs enforcement and every action, I think the country could well ask, how did 2 people get shot? I think the country can note what 2 people did to engage with ICE in the way they had previously and on the days of their death. But that somehow connects to the idea that people are somehow magically okay with illegal immigration? Oh, hell no. Not at all. We want these people removed from the country. Not apologizing for that. Let's get back to Harry Enton, who continues.
Maybe that they don't like what Donald Trump, the president, is doing, but they don't think Democrats will do a better job.
Correct. They think Democrats will do a worse job on immigration than Republicans.
All right. What about border security in general?
Okay. Border security in general. So this is immigration at large. What about border security? Look at this. Look at these numbers. Hello. Party trusted more in border security. Again, at this point, Trump's terms. Look at this. In 2018, Republicans had a 13-point advantage. If anything, the advantage is a little bit larger now. Republicans up by 15 points. So when you put it all together, you put immigration with border security and the idea that Democrats will be able to take the ball and run away on it, the polling data suggests no. This is actually an issue that Republicans should be more comfortable running on than Democrats. Democrats running on immigration may actually be to the Republicans' advantage.
Safety and security is a big one. Now, is it the totality of a midterm? Absolutely not. I have been making the argument, and if you're joining me Saturday night for Trump 1 year and 1 month later, you're going to hear a whole bunch about this. This is an economic election for Republicans. You only have to win on 2 or 3 things. This is not an economic election for Democrats, and I'll be digging into that next week. Republicans are the ones who said, we'll fix this stuff in a day. Realizing that was a mistake a few months too late, they have finally gotten into, this is Biden's mess, we're cleaning it up, and here's what's happening, and here's what's been successful, and here's what's going to happen next, and here's why it's going to be successful, and here's what it'll mean to you, and you've already seen this, and you're going to see that. They have more explaining to do. And in politics, if you're explaining, you're losing. That's always the case. That is always the way it is. In politics, if you're explaining, you are losing. Which is why it is very clear to the rational mind that when it comes to the State of the Union, Democrats are losing. They're losing. They got beat. They didn't have to get beat. They chose to get beat. They did not have to have this happen. They chose this. What is the expression? They chose violence. They chose this. They chose to be completely insane people. They chose to fight with Trump at the State of the Union when Hakeem Jeffries told them not to, which is really a whole secondary story that no one's talking about. Why does anybody think Hakeem Jeffries has any control over this party? Hakeem Jeffries is not Nancy Pelosi. He does not have control over these Democrats the way she did. Not at all. He couldn't get them to just be normal. Couldn't get them to just sit there. And none of them thought enough to say, if you support the American citizen over the illegal immigrant, stand up and say so. And they sat there. Oh, we're not going to play his game. It's game over. He asked the question, do you support the American citizen over the illegal immigrant? You can have all the time afterwards to discuss this, that, whatever. In the moment, not a Democrat stood up. Maybe Fetterman did. And that's ball game. And you right now have to deal with this. Well, Tony, it's the State of the Union. People aren't watching the State of the Union. They're going to see those clips for forever. Those clips are going to run in every ad every Republican runs from now through November 2026, and they are going to utilize it in 2028. What are we talking about? You think it's about who was watching at the State of the Union? Could we please get some focus here? Again, this is a conversation about narrative. The Democrats are in lockstep. The Democrats are strong. The Republicans are in disarray. Is that what you saw? Or did you see just the opposite? This is a narrative story that the Democrats are trying to push one thing and the reality is telling you another thing. You just had
April again.
Harry Enton go over the numbers with you. that Republicans are more trusted when it comes to ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, when it comes to the border. And this is Representative Ayanna Pressley talking to April Ryan. I don't think there's any cursing in here, producer Landon, but finger on the dump button just in case.
April, again, is someone who's been calling for the defunding and abolishing of it since 2018. It cannot be reformed. This is not about training, in my opinion. This is not about new standards or protocols. If the KKK cannot be reformed, then ICE certainly cannot be, because this is just another group of masked white militia.
Racist Ayanna Pressley. Because not every member of ICE is white. Racist bigot Ayanna Pressley. Didn't learn a thing. Didn't learn anything. Is still doing what? Pushing narrative. Not facts. We just went over the facts. Somebody's asking in the chat room, is there still a KKK? And the answer is yes. They're just a different wing of the Democratic Party. Her party. Not my, what? What'd I say? KKK, it's all Democrats. Everybody knows this, it's history. But it's a great example. Harry Enten has numbers, and yet look at the narrative that Ayanna Pressley is pushing. That's the story. That's what this election is about. Can you overcome the narrative? If you can overcome the narrative, if you actually are willing to fight the narrative, well, then you can get a lot of things done. Then you can get a lot of things handled. The question is, are these people willing to do it? Are they willing, meaning the Republicans, are they willing to fight? That's the question. Now, JD Vance was scheduled to speak in Wisconsin, and he hasn't yet. I think right now they've taken a little bit off the schedule. But Tim Walz, the governor, he is the governor of Minnesota. He is now speaking, and he is all sorts of outraged because, as we said, JD Vance is there to clean up the fraud. JD Vance, Mehmet Oz, they are there to clean up the fraud. This is what they were tasked to do by President Trump. So Vance is full on fraud patrol, and they're pausing some Medicaid funds to Minnesota because of the concerns about the fraud. So here comes our good friend, Tim Walz, to say this is just the worst thing that's ever happened to anybody, anywhere.
Tax dollars from a state that has some of the best outcomes in the country on healthcare, has some of the lowest error rates on Medicaid, and now asking us to turn away people who need that healthcare. So I'm real proud of this team. I think we got a great package here. We need the legislature's help. But as I said, this should be hugely bipartisan. And the only reason I think you wouldn't make a move on many of these proposals is you like to talk about fraud.
No one likes to talk about fraud. We want it gone. This is a money grab? Are we going to pretend that the fraud doesn't exist? And we should be clear, Governor Walz, it doesn't just exist in your state. But your state right now is the ground zero for it, because there are a fair amount of people in your state who look the other way when it happened. And it has been now a couple of months of this being exposed. And what are the moves you're making? A lot of lip service. You got your lieutenant governor out there, you know, the one who wants to scream it's okay to mutilate children and call it gender-affirming care, the lying fraud that she is. But you won't do anything. You're all talk and you're no action. Billions of dollars. And it isn't just Minnesota. It isn't just Minneapolis. We know what's going on in Ohio. We've heard the stories out of Oregon and California and other places. We want it all gone. Can you imagine what we can do if we're not spending billions of dollars on BS? Do the math. Let's say the number isn't 19 billion. Pick a number. Let's call it $5 billion. Can we agree that there's $5 billion worth of fraud going on out there when it comes to these home health services, et cetera? Right? Let's say that that's the case. Can I ask the question this way? How many veterans can we house with $5 billion a year? Because I'm willing to keep spending the $5 billion a year if we spend it on housing veterans. I mean, if we're going to spend the money, it's a better use of spending the money than fraud, right? Anything that isn't full-on enthusiastic of end the fraud can be seen as support of the fraud. Now, is that what Tim Walz is saying? I don't actually think so. But we're talking about narrative, right? Tim Walz supports fraud. There you go. That's how it works. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today. Welcome back, everybody. Tony Katz Today. Good to be here. Good to be with you. Is Hillary in front of a committee yet? Ah, there she is. No, not that. Good Lord. Hillary has spoken, although we don't know everything about her testimony yet, but it's exactly what you expected from them. Full-on offense, attack. How dare you make this about me? How dare you make this about Bill's relationship and paintings and all the rest? I will get to that story as we're coming back to the show. Oh, did they already create the ad? We already got the ads from the State of the Union? Fantastic. Yes, we do. Already have ads from the State of the Union. All right. There it is. You think Hillary Clinton doesn't recall ever encountering Jeffrey Epstein? Do you believe that? Do you think that that's in any way, shape, or form possible? Yeah, I have a hard time with that too. I have a very hard time with that as well. Hillary Clinton testifying before the House Oversight Committee. It's behind closed doors. But the opening statement believed to have said, a committee endeavoring to stop human trafficking would seek to understand what specific steps are needed to fix a system that allowed Epstein to get away with his crimes in 2008. But that's not happening. Instead, writes Hillary Clinton, you have compelled me to testify, fully aware that I have no knowledge that would assist your investigation in order to distract attention from President Trump's actions and to cover them up, despite legitimate calls for answers. Okay. Jeffrey Epstein just happened to have a painting of your husband in a blue dress in his apartment. But you know nothing. Quote, as I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13th, I had no idea about their criminal activities. And then she followed up by saying, I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island homes or offices. I have nothing to add to that. Now, for the record, it's very possible she was never at the island. I was never on the plane. I would never make the accusation. Never. And I don't like Hillary Clinton at all. I would never make the accusation that she is guilty of something regarding Epstein and the abuse of children at all. I don't even make that claim of Bill Clinton, although there's some photos that need some answering. But the very idea that this is all about Trump, again, narrative. And, you know, there's this story out here, uncorroborated story, unsupported story. It is just how people tell stories. That look what Donald Trump did with a 14-year-old girl. There's no proof any of that ever happened at all, anywhere, at any time, period. End of list. It will not stop the narrative seeker from screaming pedophile because this is all they know how to do. They can't rationally discuss, and they can't come together with us for one basic concept. Can we throw people who abuse children in jail, please? Now, for the record, any proof comes out that any Republican, any conservative abused children, any independent, any moderate, any liberal, or any Democrat abuse children, I will stand with you and I will help you cuff them. Including if their last name is Trump, Gates, Clinton, Obama. I don't care. Those who abuse children need to go to jail. But there's no proof Trump did it, but it doesn't stop the narrative pushers from pushing. But you want me to believe Hillary Clinton never met or engaged with Epstein? That one I have a hard time with. This is Tony Katz today. Right? Methink thou doth protest too much. That is where I'm at. I've never actually believed it. To the extent that I've spent much time thinking about it, the idea that Hillary Clinton was involved in the abusing of children, absolutely not. Don't see it for a second. I think that she's a horrible person. And I think that she is somebody who would skirt the law aggressively and purposefully. I think she is somebody who is a beyond political animal and an obscenity in that regard. Do I think Hillary Clinton would hurt children? Not a chance. Not for a moment. I don't know if I want to answer the question about Bill. You asked me about Hillary. I say no chance. And I've never accused her of it, and I'm not about to now. You ask me what I think of Trump? No chance. And I say no chance because it's not his jam. It's not what he's about. It's just not. He's in his heyday, when in his single days, he could have been with anyone, anywhere. The idea of children is absolutely not his style. No, not at all. Don't buy it for a second. Never would. See how easy it is to be normal? And in all of these things, what I think is inconsequential. Investigate away and go from there. That's it. Investigate and then go forward. I am often amazed at how hard it is for some people to be normal. Anyway, does anybody else just blink and feel like time just flew by lately? You mean today? Jen, do you mean, are you talking about today, or are you talking about in like this year? Because it is weird. It's already the end of February. But so I've been asked this question many times. People, because right, it's a kind of standard question. And maybe I overthink it. The total elapse of time, you can argue, is a blink. But I never think that it's going too quick. I think that it's going exactly as it's always gone, and it's my job to make sure I take a snapshot of the moments that matter. 2 nights ago, I'm at the State of the Union. I took a snapshot. You bet. Being in the gallery, and I'm talking to this guy next to me. I'm forgetting his name. He's from Virginia. He's from Vienna, Virginia. And we are playing Where's Waldo with Democrats in the crowd. We were trying to find Fetterman, and we were looking for the hoodie, only to realize he wasn't wearing a hoodie. And we were trying to, wait, where's Bernie Sanders? Bernie wasn't there. Like, that's, take the moment. So no, I don't. I don't. I guess in the overall sense, you look at your age or something like that, you'd be like, wow, that went quick. But that's how I deal with it. Everyone else has got to do it the way they do it. So the red states are growing. I don't think this is surprising, because when we talk about where people move to, right? They go from point A to point B. We sometimes don't ask the question, who are they going with? Tony Katz today. Meaning, are these individuals or are these families? This is from something called the Institute for Family Studies, right? This might have a bunch of pushback against it. There might be other studies. Red states are gaining babies in the post-COVID shuffle. Sorry. Now, I do not know the Institute for Family Studies. I don't know anything about them whatsoever. It gives a whole bunch of stories about how red states have higher birth rates than blue states. Of this, I am not, nor are you, shocked on any level. And red states have seen higher rates of in-migration from other states than blue states. Well, it would make sense. I think it's a pretty rational point of view that people would leave a blue state for a red state if they had something on the line. And one would argue that people who have families have more to, they have more to gain through the move. There's more value to them to the move. And it would make perfect sense that they say, where can I go? Where can I be? What can I be a part of? How can I better the opportunities for myself and my family? And the answer is go places. Sense. When we talk about the people who move, it would make sense upon reflection that the people who move are mostly people with families. I get that. I wanted to give the update on what we know about Cuba, but I did come across the story that the FBI is now firing agents who worked on the investigation to President Trump. The people who participated in the probe into the retention of classified documents. This has been part of what Kash Patel has allegedly been working on. The FBI Agents Association says the firings are unlawful and endanger national security. I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that is fully the story, that this is the thing they've been working on hard. But I don't mind these people being fired. I support people who are involved in witch hunts. I support people involved in violating the basic rules. I'm absolutely fine with them being fired. I think that's outrageously valuable. But no, what I wanted to get into, what was going on with Cuba and what happened in this shooting. Because as is reported, the Cuban government is saying that there was a boat that the 10 passengers were on, and it started with that soldiers killed 4 people, wounded 6 others aboard a speedboat that was Florida registered that had entered Cuban waters. And Cuba claimed opened fire on Cuba first. The Interior Ministry said this, and they said the people on the boat were Cuban nationals living in the U.S. I have no idea if that is indeed true. I do know that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, made a statement last night on the subject.
So this morning, we were made aware by Cuban authorities of an incident off the coast of Cuba. We immediately began to look into it. As it stands now, the Department of Homeland Security, the Coast Guard, others are involved. The majority of the information we still possess is what Cuban authorities are providing both the public and the U.S. government. We have our embassy on the ground in Havana working this as we speak, asking for access to the people that were on those vessels, if they were American citizens or permanent residents. According to the Cuban regime, the boat was registered in Florida. We're tracking that down. We will know shortly, and we will know quickly, many more facts about this incident than we know right now. The majority of the facts.
Sorry, a little bit of an audio issue there with the video. That's not you. That was on me. Seemed like they didn't have much information. Searching to get it. Are these Cuban nationals or are these American citizens? That is the question. Meanwhile, the Vice President JD Vance is in Wisconsin, speaking to the people to reinforce what was happening at the State of the Union. Let's take it to the Vice President.
Just say that, we fought alongside each other in Vietnam. I said, Derek, if we were Democrats, we could get away with that, but I don't think that's going to fly. We're Republicans. These media reporters are not going to let us get away with that. But there are so many great things about Derek, but all of the amazing things. No taxes on tips, that happened because of Derek. No taxes on overtime, that happened because of Derek. No taxes on Social Security, that happened because of Derek. So if you are a citizen in this district and you see a big tax refund check come next month or the month after that, whenever you file your taxes, remember it was Derek Van Orden who made it happen, and it was congressional Democrats who tried to stop it. So we're going to send Derek Van Orden back to Washington? Yes. We've also got President Trump's endorsed candidate for governor of Wisconsin, Tom Tiffany. Tom, please stand up and be recognized. Another great guy. Another guy without whom we could not have accomplished all the great things that we did in Washington, D.C. Now he wants to come back home and serve as governor. Are we going to make Tom Tiffany the next governor of Wisconsin? There we go. And then finally, if I'd had a few people stand up, I want to recognize Representative Grothman. Where's Representative Grothman? Thank you, sir. It's good to see you.
The good vice president recognize who he wants. And we take the quick break right now, and then he's going to be speaking, backing up what we heard at the State of the Union. Let's hear what he has to say. Keep it here. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today. All right. So I do want to hear it. I've got Senator Todd Young. He's the one who invited me to the State of the Union. I've got him a little bit after 1 o'clock, top of the hour, because I want his take of the State of the Union, because he's a guy who I don't think he's on Trump's love list. Let's put it that way. But he seems to be really into the Trump account thing, which is a very interesting concept. Because when I first heard it, I'm like, I don't want government doing any of this stuff. And then you realize it's not necessarily government. Then you realize how this thing came to be regarding the private sector and how they want to keep it private. And you see some of the issues that are potentially involved, and yet still you see opportunity here. And it's compelling in its curiosity. And so I want to speak to the senator about that and get his take on what parts of this Trump agenda, as a guy who isn't necessarily MAGA, when I say isn't MAGA, isn't even liked really by MAGA, where does he see the opportunities? So I want to get to that. Let's bring it back to the vice president.
State of the Union addresses. The president of the United States said very well, you watch their reaction to some of what he was saying, and all I could think was, these people are kind of crazy. These congressional Democrats, if you think about all of the things that they were doing, and I got to tell you, of course, I've got the best seat in the House in many ways, right? I'm sitting right next to the Speaker of the House. I'm sitting right behind the President of the United States. And I've got one internal monologue going on, one thought in my head the whole time, which is don't make a stupid face for 2 hours, which is hard for me. When you're on TV for 2 hours and the Democrats are doing crazy things. So I'll give you a little lay of the land. So to the left, my left, is all of the Republicans, okay, because I'm sitting right behind the president. And to my right is some Republicans, but mostly the Democrats. And so I see the reaction of all the congressional Democrats, and it's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. So you say, like, for example, you had this beautiful little girl, had such a sweet moment with her dad. You may have remembered. She was probably 6 years old. She had been assaulted by an illegal immigrant. She had had a very bad, I think, medical prognosis, but it turned out that she was okay. This 6-year-old girl hurt by a human being who never should have been in this country in the first place, who was led into this country by Joe Biden and the Democrats. And she's hugging her dad, and she's so excited, and you can tell. And I think everybody's heart feels very, you get that warm and fuzzy feeling. And then I look over at the congressional Democrats, and they're just scowling. They cannot clap their hands for a 6-year-old who survived an attack from an illegal alien. What is that? What kind of a person can't stand up and cheer for an innocent young girl who's doing well, who's showing the entire country strength and resilience? And then the president had this line. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but he said, if you believe, stand up and cheer if you believe that the American government's first priority should be to look after American citizens instead of illegal aliens. And all the Republicans, including Derek and everybody else, stands up and starts cheering. And then you look over the Democrats. Complete silence. No reaction at all. The one thing that got at least some of the Democrats to stand up and cheer was the Olympic hockey team, which we're, of course, very proud of. But you got to ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, what is it about a political party that cannot stand up and cheer for a 6-year-old girl who survived an attack? What is it about a political party that can't stand up and cheer for the fact that we have rising wages and low inflation for the first time in a very long time in the United States of America? What is it about a political movement that sees the mother of a woman who was murdered on a bus? Because the president highlighted this woman, you know, her 22-year-old daughter was riding on a bus to work, was killed by a violent criminal who was let out of jail 13 times by Democrat leadership, should have never been on our streets, and then murdered an innocent girl. We recognize her mother, her strength and her character and her grief. And I think we all kind of grieve with her a little bit. And the Democrats cannot even stand up and cheer for that. And so the question of the next election is not, do we want low taxes? And of course we do. It's not, do we want a secure border? And of course we do. It's a more fundamental question than that. Do we want to give power back to the people who opened our border, who raised your taxes, who won't even cheer for a 6-year-old girl who was wounded because of their bad policies? And I think our answer to that is hell no. We want to give power back to the people like Derek Van Orden who fight for us. And here's the thing, it's funny. I talk to the president multiple times a day. It's kind of the job of vice president. You talk to the president a lot. And every single day, the president will say to me, what have we done today? Got to do more, got to do more, got to do more, okay? The president has such an intense work pace. And I sometimes think, Mr. President, we got to take stock of all the incredible things that we have accomplished over the last year. When Joe Biden and the Democrats left us, the government of this country, we had the highest inflation that we had ever had in 40 years. Finally. Thanks to Donald Trump and congressional Republicans, we now have inflation at 2.4%, the lowest in 5 years, and it's coming even lower, ladies and gentlemen.
This is all we've been talking about, and the State of the Union was really the firing gun to, this is how we're talking. You have to talk about the excesses. You have to explain to people what you have done. You have to say, this is what Biden left us, and this is what we've done since, and here's where it's going, and here's the proof of this, and here's what's coming next. And now they're all on the message. Tony Katz today. Good to be here. Good to be with you. Find everything I do over at TonyKatz.com. The Vice President, JD Vance, is in Wisconsin talking about the economy. As I said, for the Republicans, this is a bit of an economic election. Not in full, but a bit. If more than 50%, I'm still going to say yes. Not for Democrats, for Republicans. And talking about the good things, talking about the growing things, yes. And as JD Vance said, we have an option in this election. You can let these crazy people who don't cheer for children surviving attacks from illegal immigrants, who don't value American citizens over illegal immigrants. You can't vote for these people. It's crazy. You vote for them, you can't put them in power. That's what this midterm is about. These people are nuts. Correct. That's absolutely it. So glad they got the memo. But the vice president is speaking in Wisconsin. I'm going to bring it back to him.
Fault. You guys left us a country with sky-high inflation. You all left us a country where we were going everywhere but America for energy. You left us a United States of America where the average family was $3,000 poorer. So our attitude is, you know what? When you talk about affordability, you're exactly right. You caused an affordability problem, congressional Democrats, and we are here to fix it.
Message. This message should be taking place in May.
Now, I want to say a few more things, then I'll take some questions from the reporters. So one of the things that I love about what the president has done is he is trying to cut out the fraud and corruption in the federal government. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is very, very rampant. We have way too many people who got way too comfortable getting rich off of your tax dollars instead of providing the services that they need or maybe giving you a tax cut. We had fraudsters getting rich off of your generosity. I did a little press conference yesterday with Dr. Oz, who runs our Medicare and Medicaid services. And beforehand, we were talking about some of the fraud that he had uncovered in just a couple of months. Let me give you an example. In next door Minnesota, in Minneapolis, not a very well-governed state, You had a situation where we have a service that the federal government provides. The states actually provide it, and then they get reimbursement from the federal government. And you know what they do? They help autistic kids with after-school services. Because if you know anybody who has autism or is on the spectrum, sometimes you need a little bit of extra help. And so we've got a program there to help those special needs kids to make it easier for their families. What was happening is that Somali fraudsters, many of whom were illegal immigrants, shouldn't have been in this country to begin with. You had Somali fraudsters who were saying that their kids were autistic, even though they weren't. They were collecting a fat check from all of you, and they were getting rich from it. So what happens? You get poorer, your tax dollars go to Somali fraudsters, and worst of all, you've got special needs kids in American communities that we ought to be helping, and instead of helping them, we're helping fraudsters who don't have the problem to begin with.
Now, examples like this connect. The only thing I would advise the White House to do is that while absolutely there are Somali nationals involved in this fraud, there are plenty of Americans involved in this fraud. So we should be clear, it is about the fraud. And if you're here illegally, you have to go. One could then turn to Representative Ilhan Omar, that Jew-hating bigot, and say, why are you defending these people? Just because they're Somali? That's disgusting. Disgusting. Your job is the defense of American citizens. And if they're American citizens engaged in fraud, then the justice system has to deal with them. But you don't get to defend people just because they look like you. That's bigotry, and that's gross. That's exactly what you say to Ilhan Omar. That's how you have to deal with her. I wouldn't even bring up that they are Somali like he is. I would say that those involved, some Somali nationals, some Americans, others, everyone guilty. Everyone guilty is going to go to jail or be deported, and people who shouldn't be in the country to begin with will definitely be deported. Now I think it's very okay to go part 2 on that conversation, which is, and why don't we take a better look on who we're allowing into the country? Do they want to be Americans, or do they want to take advantage of Americans? Because we want the former, and we absolutely need to reject the latter.
But see, this is the thing you can't do when you're sitting behind the president. I would have gotten in trouble for that. Even Derek wouldn't have defended me if I did that. But it's just nails on the chalkboard. They're talking, they're interrupting. The president was completely unfazed by it. But again, you're sitting there, and then the president gets to the point where he says, you know what? We are going to stop congressmen and congresswomen from getting rich off of insider trading, from violating the public trust that you have put in them and get rich off of insider trading. Of course, a lot of people stand up and cheer. Most of the Democrats don't. You know who was not standing up and cheering? Nancy Pelosi. I have never seen a person more angry in my life than Nancy Pelosi when the president of the United States is calling out insider trading. Ladies and gentlemen, my hope for all of you, of course, is that we can make you richer and more prosperous and safer in your communities. But my hope for all of you is that you find somebody who loves you as much as Nancy Pelosi loves insider trading, because then you will have a very good life indeed. But on all these things, we just have to stop the fraud. The government exists to serve you. We want the government, of course, to be smaller. We want it to be limited in its scope. We don't want it in your pocketbooks. We don't want it telling you what to do.
Correct.
But there are a few things you need the federal government to do. You need it to provide for the common defense. We need a good military. You know, we need it to ensure that people like special needs kids are able to get the essential services that they need and can't afford.
There's a value to government. I'm not an anti-government guy. I'm just an Article 1, Section 8 guy. I'm a believer in small government. Who is not in favor of ending fraud? And yet you will find, just like Democrats won't stand up and cheer and say we favor the citizen over the illegal immigrant, they won't stand up and say we favor the removal of fraud. They won't say it. It's pretty unbelievable stuff. We've got Senator Todd Young scheduled to be with us coming up in a little bit. His take on the State of the Union. And what lessons does he think Republicans need to take with them? Keep it here. This is Tony Katz Today. So let's bring it back to JD Vance, shall we?
I got so many notes here. I could sit here and go on for another 45 minutes. Housing prices are down. Apartment rents are down 4 months in a row. We came in saying we wanted to make housing more affordable, and we're starting to make good progress on that. The annual cost of a new mortgage in just a year is down by $5,000. And my friends, if we could get Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates because the inflation is now low, then those mortgage costs would come down even further. I happen to believe, and I know the President of the United States does, that when young people look at their country, one of the best things that we can do for our young families is make it possible for them to afford a home again and raise a family in a piece of land that they themselves own. I happen to believe that we do not want our young people to be permanent renters in the society that was built by their parents and grandparents. We are going to fight for our young families to own a home, and that's exactly what we've been doing for the past year. Let's keep on doing it. But let me just close with this one final thought, and then I'll take some questions from the media. There are a lot of specific issues that matter. We could talk about all of them. We could talk about the fact that we've got a closed border and they opened it. We could talk about the fact that we've got the lowest murder rates in the United States of America in 100 years. And you wonder, how did that happen so quickly? Two reasons. Number one, we empowered our great law enforcement officers to do their job, and the last administration was holding back. And two, we got a lot of violent criminals the hell out of this country and send them back to where they belong. That's how you get a low murder rate. We got so many things we could brag on, so many things that we still got to do. We still got to work to make home ownership affordable for our young families. You know, you've probably seen the headlines about, you know, the stock market has been doing incredibly well because the economy's been doing incredibly well. But the president asked me probably 4 months ago, he said, what about the Americans who don't own stocks? And so he's created a new program where we can allow the 35% of Americans that don't own stocks to open up the kind of accounts like a 401k that some workers have access to, other workers don't. We're going to allow every worker to open up that kind of account. So when the stock market goes up, it's good for every single American citizen, not just the 65% of people who own stocks. We want to make it good for everybody. So there's still so much more that we can do. But the fundamental question, I don't think, is this issue or that issue. The fundamental question is, who fights for you? And when I saw at the State of the Union, when I saw all those Democrats sitting on their hands, even when we're celebrating, you know, little girls who survived a terrible attack, it hit me that these Democrats, most of them, they don't serve you. Now ask yourself, why are they sitting on their hands? I would like to think, I don't know him personally, maybe Derek would disagree with me, but I'm going to be a little charitable to those congressional Democrats. And I think when that little girl was standing up, hugging and kissing her dad, that those Democrats, there was at least a part of them, the human part and their soul, that wanted to stand up and cheer for that little girl. And all of them sat on their hands. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? And the answer is because they know they don't answer to you. They answer to somebody else. They answer to people who have corrupted this country. They answer to people who opened the border. They answer to people who got rich off of illegal immigrant labor. We want you guys to get rich off of the labor of American citizens. We want American workers to get rich for working hard, not illegal aliens. And that, to me, is the fundamental difference between congressional leadership and congressional Democrats and the congressional Republicans under the leadership of this president. These guys, they don't serve you. Watch a speech of any of the congressional Democrats. Go watch if you can handle it. Maybe have a few good Wisconsin beers beforehand and prepare yourself. But watch a speech when these guys talk about illegal immigration, and then watch a speech when they talk about manufacturing jobs for American workers. That doesn't give them passion. That gives Donald Trump passion. That gives Derek Van Orden passion. The idea that every single one of you should have a good job, a good life if you work hard and play by the rules. The idea that our young families should be able to own a stake in their country, that's what fires us up. That's what we're fighting for in government. But you watch these congressional Democrats, what really fires them up, they get really mad at the idea that we are deporting illegal immigrants. They talk about the dreams of illegal immigrants who have come into our country, but what about the dreams of you? and your children, because that's who I'm fighting for. That's who Donald Trump is fighting for, and that's who Derek Van Orden is fighting for. I'm not going to tell you, and I know there are a lot of people who are going to watch clips of this or even watching it live right now. I'm not going to tell you you're going to agree with us, agree with me on every single issue. That'd be impossible. Even in the Republican Congress, which is just, 220 or so very good guys, you've got disagreements of opinion. You've got some people who will say this thing about this issue and something else about another issue. Disagreement is fine. But I'm not asking you to agree with us on everything. I'm asking you to remember who serves you. And what I know about Donald Trump and the congressional Republicans is that we wake up every single day and we think about, how do we fight for you? The question in November is, do we give power to the people who fight for corruption, who fight for fraud, who fight for illegal aliens, or do we give the government to the American citizens for whom it was designed and for whom it was created? I think I know the answer. Let's vote for our people. Let's vote for Derek Van Orden next November. Thank you all. Thank you, guys.
I think now he's going to take some questions. I'm going to go up to
Thank you all.
to Senator Todd Young. Oh, here's a good comment.
Thank
It's
you.
not
Thank
your
you.
country,
Please
it's India.
have a seat, and what we'll do is we'll answer a few questions from the media, and I would ask that the local reporters get first dibs here, and then we'll answer as many questions as we've got time for. So go ahead.
Wow.
Alex Loroff with Spectrum News 1. Mr. Vice President, there was a poll released yesterday of Wisconsin voters where 70% of respondents said their biggest concerns right now are affordability and the cost of living.
Sure.
What can still be done at the federal level to ease some of those affordability concerns that Wisconsinites still have?
Well, look, it's our top concern, too. We want people to be able to afford a good life. Nothing breaks my heart more than the idea that you've got somebody who goes out, they bust their rear end, they come home, they want to give their kids a nice meal. Maybe once or twice a year, they want to take their kids on a nice vacation. We want people to be able to afford that so long as they work hard and play by the rules. And I think the thing that we've tried to remind ourselves of in the Trump administration is we were put in a very big hole. When you talk about the average American family under Biden's leadership that lost $3,000 of take-home pay, we think every single day, how do we get that $3,000 back and then some? You heard me say earlier, and this is a true statistic, that the average American family has gained about $1,400 under the Trump administration just in about a year and a month. Now, that's something we're very proud of, but we think every single day that still means that compared to when Biden took over, those Americans are still running behind. They're still catching up. So I think what we have to do every single day is come up with ideas for how to make the American people's lives better. And that's what we're doing. Some of this is the policies that we've already put in place take a little bit of time to work their way through the system. Some of it is
exactly the conversation that I believe they needed to have a couple of months ago. They need to have back in May, and I'm just thankful that they're doing it now. I really am. I'm thankful that they are on it now. So let me just make sure I am connected to the good senator. Now we're in the live stream, sir, Senator Young. So you are speaking to people. So none of that cursing that you like to do behind the scenes and proper jokes. Senator Todd Young, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm great, Tony. It's great to have you, and I guess you're having me this time.
Yes. So
yeah.
Senator Young,
great to be with you, friend. Yeah.
Senator Young, who invited me to the State of the Union, I don't think he knows where I had seats. He was very front and center. And can I notice that you were the first person to walk over to the Supreme Court justices when they walked into the room? Was that purposeful?
It was. Yeah, it was. These are turbulent times. I respect what they do, and you know, I'm not going to reveal if there are any exceptions to that. I respect for the most part how they do it, and I just thought, in this era of tribalism and turbulence and animus and all the rest, it was good for them to know that somebody in Congress cared. And I've gotten to know a couple of them quite well. I've gotten to know Supreme Court Justice Barrett through the confirmation process. Of course, she's a former Notre Dame law professor,
Yep.
and I said hello to her and Kavanaugh, gotten to know him fairly well. So it was nice to make that personal connection also.
Let me start the radio show. Let me bring it in right now. So JD Vance is speaking in Wisconsin. He was given the marching orders. Okay, here's what the State of the Union said. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're going to address the so-called affordability conversation. Although we should be clear, there are some things that are still too expensive, and the administration needs to work on those things. But we've got a message. And if there's one thing I take from the State of the Union, is that this idea that somehow Republicans are in disarray is complete insanity. It's, again, this narrative conversation. And
I completely agree with you.
Story.
I completely agree with you, Tony.
Right there, Senator. Hold on one second. Let me introduce you. Let me do my job. Tony Katz. Tony Katz today. It's Senator Todd Young from the state of Indiana who invited me to the State of the Union. He's the reason I was there. And always to hear from you on this conversation is, you're not a guy I would ever call MAGA by any stretch of the imagination, but there are these places where you have absolute agreement with the administration and see opportunity. So let's start with this. This idea that the Republicans are in disarray. What say you from the inside?
Yeah, I always think the best thing to do when you start to hear about anxiety and uncertainty, and that's our current political environment right now, is just to calm the heck down. Man, we've got some people freaking out. Some friends of mine, whether they're MAGA or just generic conservative Republican, people are freaking out. And listen, look at the polling. Trust your gauges, as the pilots like to say. The polling shows Republicans are still preferable to Democrats on every issue that matters. The economy, crime, immigration, foreign conflicts, terrorism. Republicans are still trusted. And that admittedly is a function largely of the dysfunction and incompetence of the left and of Joe Biden in particular, and many Democratic leaders in Congress and beyond. But the polling says we still are more trusted. So we start there. Are we optimizing our opportunities right now? No. We need to be disciplined. We have not been. We need to stay on message. We have not. We need to inform the American people all the great things we have done, and we have done many. But I start there, Tony. And I think the president did a good job of unpacking some of those value propositions for the American people for the next number of years and explaining what Republicans are all about. But that was the starting gun. And now we really need to tease out what we did on the largest tax cut in American history and elaborate on that as I could do. We need to, yes.
You sit there through the speech. Is it what you thought he would address? There a lot of this was thanking this person, thanking that person, telling this real story of American greatness, of American heroes, of not forgetting people, of saying thank you, of recognizing sacrifices. There was a lot of that, which was not just emotional push-pull, but rather a recognition of who we are as Americans, right? It was telling its own story as much as it was about anything else. But the idea of specific policy conversations, were there things you wanted the president to talk about that he didn't? Or were there things that he did talk about where you were like, I'm thrilled that was something he brought up?
Well, I'm thrilled that he called our attention to the chief warrant officer, the pilot who through great trial and tribulation ensure that the Maduro snatch operation was successful. I don't think people realize just how close that whole operation was towards not working, but it came down to one man and his bravery, and he appropriately received the Medal of Honor. So I was glad we got that. I'm glad we saw the USA hockey team, and at least hockey unifies the left and the right in this country. So that was great. But, you know, I think the president could have talked more about just how important this tax cut was to everyone. He mentioned it. I'm glad he did. I don't say this critically, but we could have spent a whole speech on that. Might have bored people to talk about tax cuts. But I thought that was really important. I think that's going to be a key argument, frankly, as we head into more deeply into the midterms. The Democrats want to increase your taxes. The Democrats are still the party of government. The Republican brand has not changed over the years, and I think that we need to continue to elaborate on what we did. Yes, we increased the child tax credit by hundreds of dollars and linked it to inflation, so its value is never going to go down. So that's how our tax effort helps working families. We boosted the standard deduction. And that's claimed by 90% of taxpayers in this country. So 90% of Americans benefited from that. We instituted a new $6,000 bonus deduction for lower and middle income seniors. We implemented no tax on tips. That's easy to explain. No tax on overtime. So individual candidates are going to be charged with litigating that case and putting it into their own language and claiming credit for it. But if our Republican candidates do that, rather than instead volunteering rehearsed talking points, people are getting tired of that. That'll sometimes get you a lift in social media, but they need to tell people what they've done and then build on that and say, here's what we're going to do.
Now, I did say to you, talking to Senator Todd Young, Republican of Indiana, I did say to you that the messaging on the One Big Beautiful Bill is some of the worst messaging I have ever seen, because you heard Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, discussing just a few months ago, and the first time it finally came up, how much they're depending on this as part of their economic success story for 2026 leading into the midterms. The messaging conversation, which is the thing I liked about the State of the Union, was that it was exactly that. It was an uplift, hopeful, we are looking at America's future because we actually believe in it, as opposed to America's terrible, America's awful, that you get often from today's political left. And certainly we saw a lot of that from the screaming and yelling in the State of the Union. But go back to the One Big Beautiful Bill. How much of what we are going to learn about this, now that it came into play in 2026, should we be looking at? Are there things that you're excited about, or say, hey, keep an eye on this, because if this works, once this gets into play, everybody's life gets a little bit easier?
Absolutely. I think President Trump, and he spent some time on this, thank God, at the State of the Union, but he needs to keep talking about, and all our candidates need to talk about, these Trump accounts, conceived of by a fellow Hoosier, and you met him, Brad Gerstner. He's from Elkhart County, and these Trump accounts put in they're long-term investment accounts for all U.S. children. $1,000 U.S. Treasury is seeded into their accounts, and these accounts are going to function like a individual retirement account, with the parents or the guardian serving as a custodian of them until the child turns age 18. And the goal is to bring capitalism to every child in America, especially lower income kids. $1,000 seed deposit doesn't sound like much money, but that could grow to over $500,000 by retirement age. that the most powerful force in the universe, as Albert Einstein used to tell us, is compound interest. So if you get started early, it can become a whole lot of money. And people have talked about this for years. It's not as though Brad Gerstner or President Trump conceived of this idea, but no one's actually gotten it done until President Trump. And I think that captures the imagination. You see, when you're running for office, and I've done it a number of times, and I'm pretty good at it. You know, I've faced some tough races, but people want your here and now deliverables. What have you done? What are the meat and potato things that you're going to do to improve my life today and tomorrow? But they also want you to be aspirational. And this really captures the imagination, these Trump accounts.
Talking to Senator Todd Young of Indiana. We will get into the future more into these Trump accounts. I will get Brad Gerstner on the show and kind of break these things down a little bit more. I do have questions, but I want to get to the flip side of the State of the Union, which is I'm in the room. I have very unique seats. I'm behind the president. I thought I treated you better than that, but I'm behind the president. And I'm on the Democrat side, so I'm looking down directly at Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. I see everything. I hear the things other people don't hear, the cursing and everything else. It's surreal. You have now been in a large number of states of the union, State of the Union addresses, I should say. Was the moments of them not cheering, the moments of them not standing up for citizens over illegal immigrants, the moments of them not being participatory in the, you know what, some things are pretty good, even if we disagree on policy. Was it any more shocking than any other time, or did Tuesday night have a different kind of feel for you?
I think every year becomes more untethered from courteous, respectful, professional conduct at the State of the Union. I can remember, and this is going to sound so old-fashioned to the young adults who listen to you, may sound a little old-fashioned to you, Tony, but I can remember when Hillary Clinton was staring at her phone in the middle of the State of the Union. I think it was when George W. Bush was president. And she was just looking down for a second at her phone in the middle of the speech, and the camera happened to capture that moment. It was scandalous. It was scandalous. Why was it scandalous? Well, because people were supposed to pay attention.
Right.
Yeah. And these days you have signs calling presidents' names. You have people yelling out things. And no one cares anymore. So I think that's lamentable. I think that's problematic when you're supposed to be able to respectfully debate issues in our country. But I'm coming to believe that maybe I'm in the minority in harboring these quaint old beliefs. The wheels came off at this State of the Union address, and it seems to get worse every year. So I hope at some point there can be a reset, and the American people collectively say, you know what, this is I'm not very proud of this. I don't want my kids to grow up in a country where people treat one another so crappy. And but that's my perspective, Tony.
The Republicans, as we discussed, sir, are now going to take the State of the Union. It's going to lead their conversations and their talking points regarding the midterms. Now, you are not up for re-election, but there is absolutely the fear that Republicans will lose the House. There's been conversations of Republicans losing the Senate. Will you be hitting the campaign trail for people, Republicans in general? And
you got it.
What is your message?
I'm a team player. I'm always out there and out there helping candidates I deeply believe in, and there's always a lot of them, and I'll do that. I'll raise money for them. I'll give speeches for them. I will do whatever it takes to make sure that the far left in this party does not again get control of the levers of government and crush our hopes and dreams. And I know that sounds dramatic perhaps to some of your listeners, but President Biden was an absolute train wreck, and we need to restore confidence in our government.
Senator Todd Young, I appreciate you taking the time being with us. Appreciate you being here. Senator Todd Young, young.senate.gov. Check him out over there. More is coming up. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today. Welcome back, everybody. Tony Katz. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. So let's go over yesterday, because I saw a lot of questions, producer Landon, because I was in the studios of WMAL in DC, and the way their setup works, right? Professional radio studio versus my home studio, is that people were able to hear you, right? So that was a really interesting question of, well, that's just a routing issue, right? Where the connection is integrated in, and then all the sound was together in one spot. And so what this tells me is that I should be able to do that and send it to you. The problem is that for the live stream, I don't want the bumper music, because I received 9 messages from YouTube yesterday telling me why the video was not able to be monetized. Because the bumper music belongs to others, and while I have the rights to it via radio through ASCAP and some other services, not on the stream. So while people can't hear you, it might be safer for the long-term use of the streaming. But people were really intrigued by the fact that they could hear you when I was in DC yesterday. Oh, they're not interested in you. They just want they want to know if you sounded like the serial killer we all believe you to be. And the answer is somewhat. The answer is somewhat. So that is that. Let me boom, get rid of this, and then let's do. Oh, I'll do this. Actually, I will do this. Let's see if I can do this right. Boom, and then boom, and then we'll share the screen.
It is shocking to me that Donald Trump is this close to declaring what could be the biggest war in the Middle East in our lifetimes. And that's saying something, considering what we went through both in Iraq and Afghanistan, without really making the case to the American public If you look back at what happened with the invasion of Iraq, there was a lot of work by the Bush White House, which in history has shown some of it was incorrect. But nonetheless, they felt an obligation to at least have the country be on board with what they were doing and why they were doing it.
That's Claire McCaskill, the former senator from Missouri, who I have found to be, as she sits there in the cable news world of MS Now, more and more unhinged and more irrational. This is not an irrational question or an irrational statement. It is to not recognize that the conversation has been ongoing. The conversation regarding Iran's nuclear capability has been ongoing, and that conversation led to that first bombing raid, which took out Isfahan, Natanz, and Fordow. Now, if you tell me we have to take them out again, I guess they weren't obliterated. I think you make that argument. But the idea that somehow a buy-in must take place is to make the claim that the buy-in has not already taken place. Sure, Tucker Carlson hasn't bought in, but who gives a? See what I did there? See, that's called being a professional. Know when to stop. I don't care if Tucker's bought in. We are watching the Iranian people fight for their lives against an Ayatollah who has oppressed them with Sharia and Islamic law for 4 decades, and they're tired. Because who the hell wants to live that way? Most people want to live free. The world has said we've had enough of Iran destabilizing the Middle East and lives and creating no opportunity to bring about a better tomorrow. The last thing in the world we want is for Iran to continue to have some type of hegemonic power in the area. We understand that the Saudis and the Turks may not be the best of friends, and it may be a long, hard slog, but it's better than these Islamists known as the Ayatollah, the mullahs, the hardliners, and the clerics. What buy-in is the former senator engaged with here? It's acceptable to say, I'd like to hear more from the president on what our options are, what the plan might be, the rationale. I'd like to hear more about that. It's a rational thing to say. But it's irrational to think that somehow it hasn't already been said to at least some degree. It is. And I believe that what Claire McCaskill is getting into here, where the left wants to go with this type of talk, is saying, well, President Trump doesn't have the people behind him. The commander-in-chief, he's got plenty of people behind him. The question of, do we need to engage bombing of Iran? Well, what's the threat to us? What's the threat to the United States? Well, it's not so much about the threat anymore. It's that these people are trying to be free, and we're better without the Iranian regime. Okay, so now we're talking about regime change. We are talking about quite literally freeing a people. And if I'm asked, I favor this. But we're talking more than just about freeing the people of Iran. We're talking about freeing an entire region from this threat. And that threat has kept the ability of peace from being able to occur. And if peace occurs. Trade is better for the people of the United States, and therefore, I argue in many ways parts of this case have already been made. And somehow there has to be buy-in from the American left. There doesn't have to be any buy-in from the American left. We've seen what the American left is willing to do. Let the Iranians do whatever they want and let those people suffer. Their plan sucks. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today. I think that I'm on it for that. I think I got that understood. So here's where we are. Here's what's going on. This is going to sound very strange. Let's see if that's still going. Yeah. Tickets are still on sale. It was supposed to shut down, but they're still there. So get your tickets for Trump 1 year and 1 month later. The bourbon, the food, we've got desserts. They're adorable. I've got cigars. They came in yesterday. Tickets.tonykatz.com. Tickets.tonykatz.com. Get your tickets. immediately, if not sooner, before it's too late. It's this Saturday, and I know a bunch of people are having a pre-party, so check that out. Because of some things going on here and some things that I have to do, I have to end now. I'm not going to lie, I have to end the stream now, which stinks. But I'm back tomorrow, and it's all good from there. I know, it's just half an hour early, but trust me when I say this has to get done. Had to do it. I appreciate you very, very much. Get your tickets, tickets.tonykatz.com. You're all pretty fantastic. And most importantly, by the way, people are now thanking you, Landon, for this show. They're thanking, look at that, they're thanking Landon. We know you haven't done anything. That's the weird part of getting thanked. It is outrageous that he is being thanked. How dare you? You people are too good. Too good. I hope to see you on Saturday. I will definitely see you back here tomorrow. Appreciate you guys like you wouldn't believe. All right, hang loose. Be good. Enjoy more radios at WIBC.com. Of course, that hasn't stopped. And I'll catch you tomorrow, guys. Be good.